House Targaryen ruled the Iron Throne for nearly 300 years. 17 male Targaryens ruled the Iron Throne. But the dynasty ended with the death of Aerys the Mad King being killed during Robert's Rebellion. Here is the complete history of one of the most interesting and powerful families in the history of Westeros. The only family of dragon lords who survived the doom of Valyria. The Targaryens left the Valyrian freehold 12 years before the doom. They resided for more than a century at Dragonstone, until Aegon the Conqueror and his sister wives Visenya and Rhaenys began the first war of the Wars of Conquest in 2 BC. During the conquest, the family built the Aegon Fort in the new capital city of King's Landing. The Aegon Fort was later torn down and replaced by the Red Keep, which remained their main seat for the duration of their dynasty. Their original castle was almost always given to the heir to the throne, the Prince of Dragonstone. The Targaryens eventually built the summer residence Summerhall, which has been given to several younger sons of the family over time. As one of the 40 dragon lords of Valyria, the Targaryens were closer to dragons than other men. Aenar Targaryen brought 5 dragons with him when he moved from Valyria to Dragonstone, and Aegon I and his sister wives Rhaenys and Visenya rode them to battle during the conquest of the Seven Kingdoms. The Targaryens rode their dragons during the first century and a half following Aegon's conquest. House Targaryen was one of the 40 ancient noble houses known as Dragon Lords who ruled the Valyrian freehold, a great empire spanning much of Essos. The Targaryens were not one of the most powerful houses, however. The family resided in Valyria until Daenys Targaryen, also known as Daenys the Dreamer, had visions of a cataclysm that would come over Valyria. Aenar sold his estate in Valyria and moved his wives, children, other relatives, and his wealth, and his 5 dragons, including Balerion, to Dragonstone. 12 years later, the doom descended on the city of Valyria, leading to the collapse of the freehold. The Targaryens were the only dragon riders of Valyria to survive this. In the century that followed, 4 of the 5 dragons of House Targaryen died, with Balerion being the only one to survive. 2 more dragons, Vhagar and Meraxes, were hatched from the eggs on Dragonstone. During the century after the Doom, which became known as the Century of Blood due to the violent struggles for power in Essos, Volantis attempted to seize power over Valyria's colonies. Most of the other free cities rebelled against Volantis, and towards the end of the Century of Blood, the young Lord Aegon Targaryen, the rider of Balerion, was approached by Pentos and Tyrosh to form an allegiance. Aegon, mounted on Balerion, flew to meet the Prince of Pentos, and then to Lys, where he set the Volantine fleet aflame. With Volantis' campaign at an end, he returned to Dragonstone and focused his attention to the lands west, which had always been the biggest interest to him. This led into Aegon's conquest, which lasted for 2 years and began with Aegon's landing at the mouth of the Blackwater Rush with a small force. House Horror, the kings of the Isles and the rivers, were extinguished in the burning of Harrenhal, and Aegon granted the riverlands to House Tully. House Durrandon, the Storm Kings at the time, were defeated in the last storm and replaced by House Baratheon, whose founder Orys was Aegon's half-brother. Visenya achieved the submission of Crackclaw Point, but Dorne refused to yield to Rhaenys. House Gardner, the Kings of the Reach, were defeated at the Field of Fire and replaced by House Tyrell and House Lannister, the Kings of the Rock, submitted the following day. Rather than face House Targaryen's dragons, House Stark, the Kings in the North, and House Arryn, the Kings of the Mountains and the Vale, also submitted to House Targaryen. The conquest ended when Aegon was anointed king by the High Septon. From the swords of his enemies, Aegon created the Iron Throne, and the dynasty he began would rule for nearly 300 years. Aegon had constructed a wooden castle, the Aegon Fort, at the place, which became known as King's Landing. In 4 AC, Aegon's wars of conquest continued with the First Dornish War. during which he and Rhaenys attempted to bring the Dornish under Targaryen rule as well. This was a bloody war, during which Queen Rhaenys was killed with her dragon Meraxes at Hellholt in 10 AC. An assassination attempt on Aegon that same year led to the creation of what we know as the Kingsguard, who guarded the king of the realm for centuries afterwards. The First Dornish War eventually ended in 13 AC, after Naemar Martell, the Prince of Dorne, sent his daughter Daria to King's Landing with a letter and the skull of Meraxes. Though the contents of the letter were never revealed, Aegon agreed to end the war there the next day. Aegon I died in 37 AC and was succeeded by his eldest son, Aenys, almost immediately. Aenys faced 4 rebellions, which had grown out of dissent and dreams of the old days. A bandit named Harren the Red, claiming to be the grandson of Harren the Black, took Harrenhal and killed Lord Gargan Corys. In the Vale, Lord Ronald Arryn and his family were taken hostage by his younger brother Jonos Arryn. On the Iron Islands, a man claimed to be the Priest King, Lodos the Twice Drowned, and in Dorne, the Vulture King raised 30,000 followers against the Targaryens. Lord Goran Greyjoy killed the Lodos and sent his head to King Aenys. The next challenges Aenys faced came from the faith of the Seven. Even though the Targaryens had been the followers of the faith, the Targaryens held themselves apart from the laws of gods and men. By marrying both his sisters, Aegon had continued both the Valyrian practice of incense, which was considered a sin in the eyes of the Seven, as well as the more rarely practiced custom of polygamy. Even though Aegon I had always been careful regarding the faith, the High Septons had never declared his marriages lawful, though they had not spoken up against him. The faith remained discontent, though they had not objected to Aenys' own marriage in 22 AC to his cousin Alyssa Valerion. New troubles arose in 41 AC when Aenys married his eldest daughter, Rhaena, to his eldest son, Prince Aegon. This uproar to the marriage caused and led to the start of the faith militant uprising. Aenys flew to Dragonstone but fell sick and died in 42 AC. Visenya immediately called Maegor back from his exile, allowing him to claim the throne. Maegor took King's Landing from the faith, though he would spend his entire reign fighting against them. In addition, he fought against Aenys' heir, Aegon, and killed both him and his dragon Quicksilver in 43 AC. Maegor's reign was a cruel one. He finished the construction of the Red Keep, which had begun in 35 AC, though he honored his nickname the Cruel when he killed all the construction workers after the work was completed. He had come back from his exile with his third wife, Tyanna, but was still without an heir towards the end of his reign. Denouncing the claims of Aenys' only surviving son, Jaehaerys, Maegor married his 3 black brides, one of whom was Jaehaerys' sister, Rhaena, and named Rhaena's daughter, Aerea, as his heir until he had his child of his own. While support for Jaehaerys grew, support for Maegor dwindled. When Maegor died mysteriously in 48 AC, Jaehaerys was the one to succeed him. Jaehaerys was known as a wise ruler and also known as the Conciliator and the Old King. He ruled for 55 years, during which time he made peace with the faith. The doctrine of exceptionalism was made to have the faith accept House Targaryen's incestuous marriages. The king had his counselors begin work on what would become the Books of Law, and he created or expanded several roads through the kingdom, including the King's Road, the Rose Road, the Ocean Road, the River Road, and the Gold Road. Jaehaerys faced a difficult decision in 92 AC, following the death of his heir, Prince Aemon, when he had to name either Aemon's daughter Rhaenys or Aemon's brother Baelon as his heir. Jaehaerys chose Baelon, but Baelon died in 101 AC, which caused Jaehaerys to become the first king to call the Great Council of 101 AC at Harrenhal, which we see in the first episode of House of the Dragon. Everything that comes after that is what we see in House of the Dragon. So that is the end of my video for part 1. However, I will be making a part 2 that will come out next week that talks about everything from from the Dance of the Dragons that we see in House of the Dragon, all the way up until we see the first episode of Game of Thrones and we see Daenerys. So I hope you enjoyed and stick around for part 2 coming out next week.